And obviously wisdom from scripture, wisdom from taking that moment, praying about it, realizing I don't have everything figured out. And I love how you put that. I don't have a front row seat to their brain, so I don't always necessarily know their intentions.
Right. Hey, and welcome to the Anything But Quiet Time podcast. Should we say what quiet time is? Is that something that people...
If you were raised in church, you probably know what it is.
Yeah.
But it's a time with God, really. And, youth and especially church camp, go have your quiet time.
Go have your quiet time, which is why we thought we had, this is a great name for our show because we're not quiet.
An out loud quiet time, yeah.
But recently somebody was asking about, now what is it about? It's like, oh gosh, well maybe we should probably go over that one more time.
Yeah. Basic church lingo, and welcome to it. And if you've already been listening, then you kind of know what it's about.
Yeah, I'm glad that on this 300th episode.
So in case you weren't familiar, it is getting close to 300, I will say that.
They're great. They just don't explain things until real late.
By the way, if you want to watch instead of listen, that's pretty new. There's only been a handful of episodes now available on YouTube, and you can text the word quiet to the number 893-893.
Most of them marked by hairstyles.
Yours?
T-shirt changes.
You do have a lot of Christian T-shirts there.
I'm like, one of my resolutions this year was to save money.
Yeah.
So less crazy Christian T-shirts. They're $20 a pop on Amazon.
That's robbery.
Come on.
Especially for a lot of the content that your T-shirt
I'll never wear again.
Yeah.
Like some of them, I just wore it because I wanted to charge up Carder.
Yeah, some of them were very cringy. I mean, very just like, oof.
You were cringed.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I was too because I haven't worn them again.
There you go. I saw something that it did not make me cringe. It made me go, whoa. I have never thought about it like that. It was a bumper sticker. Bumper stickers, sometimes I'm amazed at what people will put on their car.
Oh my word. Like your cars now come with ratings.
Yes.
Like this is R.
Yeah, I know.
Some silhouettes you're like,
I can't.
NC-17 here.
Sometimes I'm like, I can't. How do you go home and just have that? An out loud expression of yourself is you're willing to drive around in public with that. Wow. I don't want to see your private life. That's for sure.
We sound like the old people, and it's like, you do know people can see you.
What is it with these kids? But some will really make you think. They're very profound. Mm-hmm. And I saw one the other day was simply said this: don't believe everything you think.
Don't believe everything you think.
And it sent me just pondering at this stoplight where I was.
Yeah, that could take you to a funny place of because people are questioning your thinking anyway.
Yeah, it could have been sarcastic.
Yes.
But it made me go to a place of, I'm not always right about everything. Mm-hmm. Every thought that pops into my head is not correct, or even especially spiritually true. It's not biblically true. We know that. Right? We know that we have fleeting thoughts at times too, but I will get so hung up on this is the way that it is on anything for that matter. And I still think it's a fascinating premise that in 5 years, my future me might disagree with me right now. I'm so right about it right now, but I know I disagree with myself from the past.
Sure.
So it's likely that, I heard somebody say the other day, we are always the smartest that we ever are in the moment. Mm-hmm. And yet, when you look back, you realize how smart you weren't.
Yeah.
And so right now, I know that future me, God willing, if I've progressed in any sort of wisdom, that I'll look back and go, that was kind of silly. So it led me to, I don't have to feel so strongly about most things that pop into my head.
Right. And then you also have to have grace for yourself when looking back on former self, who was probably just as sincere.
Mm-hmm. True.
And authentically seeking.
Yep.
But has just grown and more mature. I mean, I remember saying things in my youth, especially that I've came to regret later, and even had to apologize for. I remember my grandmother dealt with a lot of anxiety. And when I say it, to the point where this was clearly a chemical issue with her, and we have a history of mental illness in the family. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I did see, and I can say this because my family's dealt with mental illness, a great T-shirt that I want to own, but it would offend too many people. a man in a straitjacket, and it simply says, "I got too silly." So,
You can make that joke.
I can make that joke.
Yes.
I got too silly.
And speaking of which, a great bonus episode of somebody who got too silly.
Right.
Rachelle's dad, who really did go through bipolar or even deals with it. But
Yes.
quite the story and the encouragement. It's one of our bonus episodes.
Yeah.
So you can check that out on our YouTube.
It's one of our more serious episodes, but just to kind of like put a bow on that, I sent that text message to my dad with the t-shirt. He's like, that's pretty funny.
I'm glad he gets the humor.
Yeah, you got to laugh at stuff.
Sure.
But my grandmother dealt with this general anxiety disorder. I don't think the doctors understood what was going on. And as a preacher's wife, there's the long list of verses in the Bible that you can definitely translate it over to your life. God has not given us a spirit of fear. All of these things that tell us not to worry, be anxious over nothing. And no matter how many times she prayed it, and of course I discovered that in my own life, it's like, why aren't these taking into effect? It must be something to do with my faith or ... what, and recognizing, these can be very real issues for people, much like insulin brings balance for a diabetic person. We need balance here somewhere. So what can I do? She didn't have the right people helping her find balance.
Sure.
And she never found it. And I feel very sorry for her in so many ways. She was just an incredibly talented person and just whimsical. But in the moments where she wasn't, she was haunted. And it was hard. And I didn't get it until later in life. I didn't understand more about what she was going through. And as a 16-year-old kid, I was going to set her straight. I had I had seen her call. It was every night almost felt like she would apparently go through all the daughters. So she'd start with my mom, who was her daughter-in-law. Then she'd call, her other daughter-in-law. Then she'd call her daughter, like every night. And she would talk for an hour, at least with each of them. And it restate. That's the problem with anxiety. It just keeps going on and on and on in your mind. It's hard to squash it. All of that to say, I was hugely in the wrong. Here I am standing on scripture, though, telling her, you have got to stop this. You have got to stop being afraid. That's like telling somebody who has no limb anymore, you need another leg. Grow it back.
Right.
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
And so I had to go back and apologize. The problem is that that's also something that I still kind of carry with me. There are things like that in my life where I misspoke or shared something with my kids the other day, and it was not in alignment with what I think should be a good parenting move. I did this thing. I still carry that weight, which is, that's not something God gives me. That's something I've allowed to live in my life. And, you're trying to release yourself over and grab hold of his peace instead of carrying that weight, that baggage.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, all of that to say, the things that you think, if you do think things that you've come to look at later, that was stupid. Give yourself a break.
Sure.
Because we were all stupid. We're still a little bit stupid.
Thanks for that encouragement. Yeah. No, I mean, and it is true. And I'm glad you took it there, and you kind of made me think about that other perspective of those thoughts that we know aren't true, but we even believe them. But when this kind of got me thinking about, there's this guy that I saw that kind of expounded on this, especially as we enter an election year. This is where I kind of took it, and don't believe everything you think.
Yeah.
Even your own opinions about whatever.
Right.
And this guy named Adam Grant, he has some fascinating stuff on Twitter, and he said, the hallmark of an open mind is separating your ideas from your identity. That if you define yourself by your opinions, then somebody questioning them is a threat to your integrity. If I have these, let's say, political opinions and somebody questions them, well, now I take that on as my identity if I don't separate those.
Right.
He said, though, if you see yourself as a curious person or a lifelong learner, changing your mind is simply a moment of growth. And there are a few things, I know we talked about this on our radio show, there are a few things it's like, well, yeah, that is my identity because I believe it's true. Jesus is real. Jesus is God. He died on the cross for my sins, and me becoming right with God, who I believe in the first place, that this place is by design. then I am made right with him when I trust in Jesus. So yes, I could see where somebody attacking that would get me on the defense. At the same time, I want to be as peaceful there as possible and understand that people don't always agree. But in everything else, politics, using a blinker in traffic, not using a blinker in traffic, any of these things that I have such a strong opinion on. Here's one about traffic. I think if you pull out in front of people, like if I'm going on the highway and somebody's like, they'll slow down, and he pulls out in front of me, I think you're the worst type of person. I cannot stand that.
Yeah.
And yet
It was me.
Was that you?
It was me.
Oh, you're the worst type of person.
Well, I told you I was stupid.
Sometimes I get it. You kind of misjudge. We've all messed up.
Sure.
But sometimes it's so blatantly obvious. You saw me and you're like, he'll slow down or move. And you just stroll on out there when I was only 65 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I don't have to get so riled up or offended by that. I love sitting down with somebody with wisdom, somebody with gray hair, and them just acknowledging, I used to blow up so often about things that really just don't matter in the long run. And that's not as much of a identity, probably. It's not of, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a this, I'm a that. But if we're able, I love how he put that, simply changing your mind, or at least hearing other perspectives, it's a moment of growth.
Yes.
And I'm not what my beliefs are in most circumstances.
Right.
I am a child of God when I put my trust in Jesus. That is my identity there. But if I just choose to believe, I think this way or lean this way politically, it's not that I am a this, then I can have a nuanced conversation.
Yeah. I think we need to grow our sympathy levels.
Yeah.
And so if we do that, then we're enabling that, perspective change. We're looking at it from somebody else's shoes or trying to.
Sure.
And even if you think you know different, I know what they're going through. I know them.
Right.
I've been there. I've seen the story unfold.
And maybe so.
But you still have you don't have a front row seat to their brain.
Yeah.
You have no idea. Perhaps you haven't known them as long as you think you have.
Yeah.
There's some demons there in the past.
Right.
That still plague or that they haven't, figured out yet with Jesus. And so my desire should always be, especially if somebody's in the wrong, and we're not talking about my idea of what's wrong, but what God's idea of what wrong is, which is the only gauge we should be using, right?
Sure.
Of wrong and right. Then I need to be praying that, first of all, Lord, if my heart's still bad and you do one of these prayers, Lord, they just need to stop being a poop.
That's wow.
That's not a great prayer.
Yeah.
The prayer should be, okay, Lord, I need my heart to change right now. So I want to soften right now because I know this is your kid too. Start there.
Sure.
Now that I've done that, I don't know what charges them this way. I don't know why this triggers them in this way. But there's something there that that I don't know. And then giving the benefit of the doubt, I think spiritually like that then lends to that sympathy level, right?
Yeah. I love how Proverbs 28:26 puts it. Those who trust their own insight are foolish, but anyone who walks in wisdom is safe.
Yes.
And obviously wisdom from scripture, wisdom from taking that moment, praying about it, realizing I don't have everything figured out. And I love how you put that. I don't have a front row seat to their brain, so I don't always necessarily know their intentions.
Right.
My son said the other day, we were playing Batman and villains. He's very interested in bad guys right now. So Joker, Mr. Freeze,
Two-Face.
Bane. I forgot about Two-Face. I need to show him Two-Face. And so I got ice packs.
This is a creepy cartoon. You're talking about the animated series.
Yeah.
He's a lot cooler than I was as a kid. I'd be like scared of mascots.
He gets scared occasionally.
I can't.
Rachelle, that's a Care Bear. Honestly, my wife is afraid of Care Bears. She thinks they're creepy and demonic, honestly.
There's a bunch of sunshine coming out of their belly. Something wrong there.
Don't get me started on Teletubbies.
The original acid reflux mascot, the Care Bear.
So we're watching all these, and I'll get little ice packs on my hands and run around like Mr. Freeze, and I'm the bad guy. He's Batman.
Yeah.
And he said, "Are you the bad guy?" He's 3, and I said, just for fun, I said, I'm not the bad guy because I want to turn over a new leaf. I want to be a good guy now.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I want you to be the bad guy.
I'm not buying it.
Be the bad guy.
Be the bad guy.
He wanted me to be the bad guy. Now that's fun, but it did make me think in that moment, I've wanted people to be the bad guy because I've already pegged them in my mind.
You needed to vilify a person.
No. I know that it seems like they're doing nice things now, but they're up to something because they're this type of person. I've already made them the bad guy in my mind. Okay. And instead of offering an olive branch or having hope in my mind that, wow, today they did something really cool. No, they have an ulterior motive. It's like, I got to get out of that mindset.
We do. And it can be a struggle, especially if it was like a school bully.
Right.
And you think you know them.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, how many movies have been made about that scenario? And then they grow up and the person who was bullied is like some, I don't know, very well-to-do established doctor or something.
And the bully is never left that town.
Blue collar.
Right.
You know, and at the bar every night.
You got like $5 I can like have.
Yeah.
It's a line from Just Friends and it's incredible.
Yeah. So we think we know a person, but here I am as a Jesus follower and encouraging the good news message and sharing, hey, we need to share that. And if I don't believe in change, then I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah.
So, and that's hard because it's very easy to be jaded in a world filled with people who are scamming.
Yep.
You get a text message that tells you USPS needs you to click on the link. Don't do it because that's a scam. You know, they're just around everywhere now.
Yeah.
So I get that you're not to be naive. And that goes back to the wisdom thing. And before you do the thing, pray about it.
Right.
I don't know if I can trust that guy. Pray about it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that we are called to is forgiveness. That doesn't mean that we have to trust the person again.
That's right.
Now, benefit of the doubt is there, obviously, in more of like maybe a co-working relationship and all that. But we should always root for them to come back to God or come to God for the first time. We should hope that. And so even if my forgiveness is of a person that hurt my family and is in jail for the rest of his life, I don't have to be his best friend.
Right.
I don't have to have reconciliation in that way. I don't have to hang out with him. I don't have to trust him again. But I should hope. I should hope that he finds God. I should root for him, and I should not hang that burden over his head that you'll never be good enough. You'll never be wanted by God because you did this. When God has removed that burden over me because I have done terrible things that would have kept me from the forgiveness of God, and yet he chose to bestow forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so we have to root for others in that way.
Yeah, we do. And I like the fact you brought up the boundaries too.
Yeah.
Root for them, but have boundaries, you know, and boundaries are such a natural thing that God created into a part of creation. You know, you see it in land and water. There are boundaries, the first ones ever made, right? Or you could even argue the atmosphere maybe was the first boundary he ever created. And it's only when man acquires wisdom that we might be able to traverse a little bit further out. But still, it has to be wisdom. So like for NASA, you know, you're not just, you know, launching people up into space without a suit on.
Right.
You know, you have a rocket and you have...
You would need some heavy sunscreen
just,
at the very least.
Hey, just get a giant slingshot and put Carter out there into the atmosphere. You know, we have scuba gear, we have boats, we have things to help get us into those areas where maybe God wants us to grow our relationship with that person.
It could be.
But you need to go there with wisdom first.
Right.
And there was something, I think our boss was reading from Max Lucado, and he brought up this incredible verse talking about where knowledge is, where wisdom is, that grace would abound that much more. And it was interesting because I never really thought about it from the perspective of the more knowledge that you attain, the more wisdom that is given to you, the more you're going to need to implement grace for yourself, for others.
Sure.
Because, and then you obviously able to connect to the wisest of all and say, God, wow. Look at how much grace he had to have for all of us.
What's that thing, the something Dunham syndrome, where, what is that called? You were bringing it up recently, and then my pastor randomly talked about it. Kruger-Dunham or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Where you think that you know a lot about, let's just say, biology. You know pretty much the basics. I gotta handle this. I know if I went into biology, I would know a little more. But you actually don't know how much you don't know until you learn more, and then you realize, whoa, I actually don't know that much.
Yeah.
It'd be a little similar to faith like that, right? I'm a pretty good person, or no, I have messed up some, thankful for grace. And then as you dig into it, whoa, God's requirement is this and this and this, but he's still forgiven me?
An image of that would be like somebody, let's say water was unknown to people, and this one person somehow manages to get to a beach. And they bring back this tiny cup of water. Look at what I found. And the people study the water. And maybe they even have microscopes in this land where no water exists, even though, our body is made of a lot of water and we need it to exist. But anyway, Carter, in this make-believe world, they're studying it in microscopes and look, there's salt in it, and maybe these little organisms. And then when they get led to the actual body of water, throw out everything we thought we knew.
Right.
And then even just seeing it, and then you go explore inside the ocean. And then there are places and crevices where we were never meant to explore.
Yeah.
And that is the wisdom of our God that much more. Right. Because there are things that we can't fathom, otherwise we would implode.
That is so true. Before I get to my last point, there are 2 science facts that I want to talk about because it's so incredible.
Is it because I came up with the people who can't exist?
A little bit. Did you know that we know more about space in general in some sort of capacity than we do the depths of the ocean?
I can't remember where I heard that recently, but yes, I heard that.
That's crazy.
Then
crazy. 2 is, you were talking about spacesuit earlier.
Yeah.
Did you know that if you went into space without a spacesuit, you would simultaneously burn and freeze to death? The part of you facing the sun would burn to death, but space is so cold that the back of you would freeze to death.
So you'd be like a black and white cookie.
I guess so. That seems offensive in this imaginary scenario.
No,
but
it's too.
At least nobody's ever done it.
Two-Face.
Two-Face.
You'd be like Two-Face.
We've come full circle. Yes.
Forgive me if that was offensive.
Yes.
Seinfeld. Look to the cookie.
Yes. Well, nobody's ever done it, so you haven't offended anybody that's accidentally burned or frizzed it at the same time.
Except the one guy who shows up. I did it.
Where?
And he has to put his hand on it.
Okay, so one more thing.
Oh, wait, by the way,
you
haven't been watching Pacific Rim, have you?
No.
Feel like the reason why I know about space and water is because of a really questionably good movie.
Okay. All right.
More liked on Rotten Tomatoes by the audience instead of the critics.
Good to know.
Well, there you go.
Thank you.
I love the cast in it, though.
Okay.
I'm done now.
I'm sorry. And I forgot. I'm late to our Pacific Rim segment. Go ahead, Rachelle. Take it away. We always have 5 minutes on Pacific Rim. Did you want to go into detail?
I know this movie didn't come. It came out in 2014.
I wasn't actually inviting you to say more about Pacific Rim.
Why is she all of a sudden watching this movie?
Okay.
It's been out for 10 years.
Yeah, thank you for that, though. I appreciate that. So we have a lot of spring activities starting. And we were talking the other day, I help with students at my church, and we were talking about some of these things getting going, and people talking about their track needs, and cross country came up. And it's juniors and seniors in high school, and one of the kids was talking about the year that he went out for cross country. He tried it, and he wore basketball shoes while doing cross country. And he said he got home and his feet hurt because he should have worn something light for cross country.
Yeah.
Basketball shoes are for on the court.
No, it's just so much territory you have to, like you said.
Yeah.
It's a marathon and not a sprint.
There you go. And so he was, and I don't even think he made the team or even wanted to do it after that, but that was his infamous story of trying cross country. And it led us to this great discussion. It was a perfect analogy for what we were talking about that night of some of these goals we have in life, and we're wearing basketball shoes while trying to do cross country. You want a successful marriage to a godly woman later in life. I'm talking about juniors and seniors in high school here.
Yeah.
Junior, senior guys in high school. You want a successful marriage later in life, but how are you treating your girlfriend right now?
Yeah.
You want to know the Bible backwards and forwards. You say you do. Any of us say we do. but I'm not even reading it regularly, even weekly or monthly. And we want these things, but we're not putting in the daily work. I'm not harnessing the tools, AKA the right shoes that I should now for the long run. And it wasn't just a lesson for juniors and seniors. It really spoke to me as well of like, how does my day look? You don't want it to be a checklist, but you do want to have some sort of a discipline if you do have an eventual goal in mind.
Yes. And with the goal in mind, I think you have it mapped out in your brain as to how things are going to look. We recently had that conversation with Helen Smallbone, mother of Luke and Joel Smallbone for King and Country and Rebecca St. James. And she just said something so beautiful. She was sharing about how God was opening doors when they moved to America. And she's like, this had to be God. He's answering my children's prayers so they can literally see these things unfold. It was just such a gift to their family. And I asked her, what about encouragement for people who may not be seeing the results of their prayers, the way that they've prayed for? And she invited people to look at it from a different perspective. She said, now let me tell you, some of these open doors opportunities where my family are out doing lawn care, was it raking leaves or something like that?
As a family, right?
Raking leaves as a family, or, Rebecca was babysitting, or one of my other kids was working at a flea market or something like that. She said, we made friendships and we started seeing people that we wouldn't have known otherwise. And God was utilizing all of this for his purpose. And part of that obviously is their artistry as singers, but clearly they're a lovely family and there's way more to them than just the surface level. Yeah. But it was a great reminder. Let's not put God in a box as to, well, my expectations dictate how this should look.
Sure.
Because with Joseph being entrapped in prison after his brothers, some of them left him to die,
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll get him out of the trap when everybody's gone, or whatever the thing was. They ended up selling him to slavery and he went into prison. Not too long after that, it was this whole thing to save Israel. If you don't know the story, it's the last part of Genesis. It's just an incredible. Just try to put yourself, speaking of perspective, in his sandals. I mean, we're talking years and years of faithfulness to God,
right? When
there was no sunshine, just clouds. And if that sounds like a familiar story, that Helen Smallbone just encouragement of, maybe my expectations were off, but don't think less, because God has got something in store and in mind, and it's going to be way more than you ever thought. Like Joseph saw his family all bowing down to him, and that was the extent of his dream. But God saw that he was going to save a nation. Anyway.
Yeah. I think we have to do, in terms of our own goals, because fortunately, no amount of striving helps to become righteous, to receive the grace of God. It is a gift. So,
right.
I'm not talking about that when I say we have to do all that we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm talking about just our own goals in life.
Sure.
We have to be faithful and put in the work in that sense. But understand that if it doesn't go the way that's out of my control, that God has something else planned.
Yeah.
And it could look better, like bigger in terms of human perspective. It could look worse in terms of human perspective, but obviously where we'll look back at the end of time and go, that's why he has me there.
Yes.
I served this purpose.
Yeah.
Even as minuscule as the world thought it was, or even I thought it was at the time, this is where he had me.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you brought that up, because if your story doesn't feel like it ended like a Bible story.
Sure.
Well, Joseph saved a nation, that's great.
Yeah.
But my grandmother lived her entire life in a prison.
Right.
Of whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
And was never released. And you have to include, and it's so hard for us because we can't see. There's a veil there. We can't see past our own mortality. We believe in it. We believe in eternity, unless you're listening and you don't believe. But that's not the only, our lifetime extends past that. Our mortal body, our flesh is dead. But that wasn't really the part that needed saving. And so, okay, the long term invites us to say the perspective needs to change and shift.
Yeah.
In this lifetime, you may not see the freedom of prison, but in this is you will eventually.
Yeah. Well, and that's what goes back to, I think, what our movies really, even I'm talking about the good movies that have really hurt us in the long run, that we look at the movie with the hero, action or otherwise, and we identify with the hero. And I am not the hero in this story. Jesus is the hero, and we're the extras.
Yeah.
We're the people that are running out of the way when Hulk smashes a car.
Yeah.
Like we have a bit role, and we're loved. We're his creation, but I have to recognize that I only see myself when I look at my life, and God's plan is so much bigger than just me.
You know, the hero of Pacific Rim.
And we have hit our time today.
Idris Elba.
This is the Anything But Quiet Time podcast.
Also in Thor.
Yeah.
Luther.
Next week we'll talk about those blockbuster era.
In The Office.
We'll talk about 2012. We'll talk about Mad Max. We'll talk about
Come on, those aren't believable.
Okay. That's next week on the Anything But Quiet Time podcast.